Hi there, this is Chris from MoneyHub, and this video looks at how to open an Australian bank account from New Zealand. So many people have asked us this question, what's the best way? What should I do? We've put together a comprehensive guide, which we constantly update. That's linked down below in the video description. And the purpose of this video is just to talk through some of the options that you have so you can make an informed choice. So without further ado, I'll get straight into it. There are two ways to do it. So first of all, you can choose a traditional bank, and those options are your ANZ, your Commonwealth Bank or CommBank, and that's the owner of ASB in New Zealand, NAB, which is the owner of BNZ, Suncorp, which operates unique as a bank in Australia, and then Westpac, and then Wise. Now, what the process is I'm going to go through that pretty quickly. And that is basically you need to choose a bank first, but there's two ways to do it. So the first way is if you set up a bank account with a mainstream bank. So that's your high street kind of ANZ, Commonwealth Bank, the ones I've just read out, Westpac, etc. Then you'll need to submit your details, but you won't have the bank account activated until you get to Australia. You've got to go and visit a branch, and then you have to supply some personal details such as your driver's license, passport, etc., possibly a proof of address. Usually you will, and then it will be activated unless there's any questions, and then you'll get a debit card thereafter. The difference between that approach and the Wise approach is that Wise you can set up from Australia, so you can set up from New Zealand well before you get there, and you can get a card and you'll get Australian bank account details straight away. So that's a process which takes usually 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Some people have said it's quicker. Some people have said it takes longer, but it's really it's a one-step click-through process. And then once you have a Wise account, then you can start transferring money from New Zealand dollars into Australian dollars, or just fund up your New Zealand dollar account if you wanted one, and then use that within Australia. So those are the two processes there. And of course, with Wise becoming more and more popular, then more people are actually seeing this as a quick stop effort and fix to kind of get them up and running. Then once they get established within Australia, they pick up a job, they move into a permanent place to live, then, they choose a main bank and can do things like credit cards and, other things like that. So that's pretty much the process. And so we've written about the Wise account quite extensively through this guide because we want to make it clear that is a really easy way to set things up straight away. And that's why we put Wise there. There has previously been a service from HSBC where you could set up a bank account if you had an HSBC account in New Zealand. Many people did, but now they've closed in June 2023. They've closed on they haven't closed yet, but they're closed their offers to new customers, and so that's not a possibility. So your options really are Wise plus the five main banks here. Now, some frequently asked questions which are kind of useful, and it's really coming down to each different bank, but we've tried to generalize these and just make some useful information. So the first question here, as I'll go through, is will I need an Australian address to open up a bank account? The answer is yes, but not with Wise. So with Wise, you can just put in your New Zealand details and then you'll be up and running. And there's a separate video on this guide which you can see about the process of getting your details. Whereas with your Westpacs and your ANZs, then you will need to supply somewhere to live. And of course, that may not be clear to you before you leave New Zealand. And then the sort of common question here, and I've kind of tried to summarize it all in one. So this is saying, can I open up an Australian bank account online? The answer to that is yes. Of course, to finalize it, you're going to have to visit a branch, with the exception of Wise. So that's really important because Wise is instant, or more or less, whereas the rest of the bank accounts the rest of the banks will require that branch visit and paperwork and verification, and then some time to get your account set up and your debit card and everything like that activated. Now, further on to that, do I need an Australian tax file number to open up a bank account? It's not usually the case that you do. because most people moving to Australia don't have that set up yet. It does take some time from the Australian Tax Office. But of course, that is something that you should definitely apply for. And that when you start, if you join a bank account which pays interest, so none of the accounts listed on this guide do, then you'll be able to make sure that you're taxed at the right rate and not the sort of holding rate for those that don't show a tax file number. So tax file number is pretty much the same as an IRD number, and it's what the Australian Tax Office uses to monitor and make sure you're correctly taxed. Can I transfer my New Zealand credit history and records to Australia? So whilst the likes of Centrix and Dun and Bradstreet and all of those do operate between Australia and New Zealand, the answer is no. It doesn't actually work. So you have to start from scratch, and that's just worth pointing out. Even you might see the same logos, they might see the same credit score companies or credit sort of history companies, the same banks perhaps. If you banked with Westpac in New Zealand and then you move over, surely it should count for something. It actually doesn't, as far as we know, and we hear user reports saying they have had to start again. So just be in mind, do bear that in mind, that it's not a slam dunk. If you have great history in New Zealand, you will need to work for it. Definitely in Australia, of course. If you have a job that pays well and that you have low living costs, then then if you are applying for credit, they will look at the affordability, and so that does help rather than just a credit profile. So just bear in mind that it's not going to be based on some history. It's going to look at your ongoing financial details. Now, what are the fees for transferring money between between New Zealand and Australia? The answer there is it depends on your bank. We've put together a comprehensive video above to show that it's expensive to do it with a bank. If you compare that to Wise, at the same time, it's also slower. And of course, it comes down to personal preference. So we want people just to understand that there are options there. Your bank may charge you $5, it may charge you $20 to send money, which that will get expensive if you're, topping up, $1,000 at a time. Especially as well if you're not paying very good, or so if you're subject to quite a poor exchange rate compared to other sort of alternatives such as Wise. So just have a read through, watch our videos, because that is actually quite useful to know. There's certainly no point to overpay for the same amount of Australian dollars. And then how long does it take to set up an Australian bank account? The answer is it's usually 1 to 2 hours once you're in the branch for the mainstreams, for the main banks. And then with Wise, you're looking at 15 to 20 minutes, but that can take longer. So just be aware that there is a lot of paperwork and forms and submissions and verification with the typical banks, and Wise is much more sort of time efficient than that. And then can my salary be deposited into my new Australian bank account? The answer is yes, but of course it has to be set up and it has to be active and it has to be verified. So just make sure that if it's Australian dollars being paid into your Australian dollar account, that it is properly verified, and there's not going to be any issues of that. Now, I've made some notes here. It's just useful to know. And full disclosure, I am a Wise customer. For me, I think Wise is fantastic. I always use it. That doesn't mean it's right for you. So don't, just take my word for it. Please have a look through the guides we've written, and please do your own research, because we want people to make an informed choice. Now, if you do have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments. We want our guides to be as comprehensive as possible. So we love when people leave us comments and questions, and then we can help improve them. Of course, we'll answer them with priority, so don't hesitate to leave anything down below. Thank you very much, and best of luck with your move.